So I'm going to talk about Starknet in Rust. And Starknet in Rust is a project from Lambda class. It's part of one of our Starknet projects, like the Cairo VM that is now on mainnet, the Star Prover built on top of Lambda Works, or library for cryptographic primitives, the Cairo by example site for learning Cairo, and or Explorer for Madara, and or Lambda sequencer. But this talk is only about the last one. So what is Starknet in Rust? Basically, it is a library for executing Starknet transactions. It contains the business logic that is needed in order to receive a transaction, execute it inside the VM, and interact with the Starknet state. For execution, we currently support all the transaction types, even the deprecated ones, like deploy. And we provide an alternative to Blockifier for executing Starknet transactions. It will be a part of the execution component of the Lambda sequencer, and in that sense, it contributes to have a sequencer diversity. So if you have multiple implementations of the same logic, we reduce the risk of a single point of failure. Since it needs to interact with the Starknet state, we have full support for all the syscall hints, like the new get block hash from Cairo 1, and deploy, emit event, library call for calling declare classes, and call contract for calling another contracts. We also provide state traits, so users of our library can implement different state readers, like for reading the state, or state for reading and writing to a Starknet state implementation. And there are several existing implementations, like the one we have for tests, the in-memory state reader, the SQLite state reader from Pathfinder, the full node from Equilibrium. And we are actually working on an RPC-backed state reader that reads all the necessary data from an RPC endpoint. That can be Infura or something else. So what can you do with this library? Let's suppose you have a full node. You can use it for executing transactions, or if you have a sequencer, you can integrate it into the execution component and use it to run incoming transactions. And if you need to run in every project you have, let's suppose that you want to run from the browser or run just to re-execute and check in locally the transactions, you can. And right now, both Pathfinder and the ShardLabs DevNet are using it. Also, I want to thank them because they help us a lot to iron out some bugs and improve the API. So another features from this library are support for older versions, because especially for full nodes, you need to run the whole history. So you need to take into account deprecated types of transactions, like I mentioned earlier, like the deploy one, and the V0 transactions. We currently support from 0.10 and higher, but we are adding also checks to support older ones too. It is configurable, so you can create a transaction with pre-calculated hashes, since hash calculation is pretty expensive, and sometimes you already have it calculated. You can provide them if you have them in a database. You can also pre-compile Cairo programs and provide your own Sierra or Casm contract classes. And you can also skip the features, validation, and state changes. This feature is especially useful for implementing things like fee estimation and simulating transactions. Also, you can plug different state reader implementations, as I said earlier. So for feeder work, we are integrating Cairo native. So in the future, we will be able to compile the Sierra contract classes to native code. So if you saw the from Sierra to MLAR talk earlier, you can have a sense of, okay, I compile this contract class to native code, and I'll run it outside the VM for faster execution. Also, we are performing optimizations, and we are planning to add NoSTD and WASM support in order to run be able to run transactions in the browser or in Madara, for example, that uses the Substrate environment. We are also working on adding future features of the Starknet network, like volition, and also we need to implement the OS SQL handler needed for proving. And yeah, we have to also, we want to add more debugging facilities so you can spot where if it's a VM error or a Starknet error or what happened. And that's all. Thank you.